Okay, we'll get started here. Good morning and welcome to Plain Talk for April 23rd, 2021. Brought to you by the Colorado REA. We are recording this and we'll have it available later on our YouTube channel. A couple of housekeeping items. If you've got questions, hold them to the end or put them in the chat room. And also, if you would put in the chat room who you are and who you're with, so I have a record of that as we move forward. And then if there's anything I need to follow up with, I'll be able to follow up with you. With that, today we're talking housing, affordable, attainable, whatever the new buzzword is for 2021. And we're also talking about, that's a buzzword that's been around for years, but what does it mean? Is affordable $200 a month rent, which is what I consider affordable, or is it a $125,000 house, or just what is it? So we're going to be talking about what it is and then how do we achieve that. And this morning we have with us from the Colorado Division of Housing, Spencer, Rebecca, and Melissa, and I will let each of them introduce themselves. And I know, Rebecca, I think you're probably the one starting because you have the first presentation. So I will turn it over to you.
Thank you. We can each introduce ourselves. It's nice to see a lot of familiar faces, Candace, Trisha, and meet some new ones. So thank you so much for joining on. It'll make for a robust conversation. I'm Rebecca Macy. I am a housing development specialist with the Division of Housing in the Department of Local Affairs. And I covered kind of Northeast Colorado, which I'm going to go from like Yuma up to Sedgwick over to Larimer. I'm going to start the presentation, but Spencer, Melissa, why don't you introduce yourselves as well?
Okay, thanks, Rebecca. Good morning, everyone. My name is Spencer Bolliker. I'm a housing development specialist with the Division of Housing as well. I was in the territory that Rebecca covers now, but I moved over. Now I'm in the sort of north central Rockies region, cover Boulder, Jeffco, up to Grand Summit, and up to Jackson. And good to see a lot of you today, and looking forward to having a good conversation.
And good morning, everyone. My name is Melissa Nearson. I am also with the Colorado Division of Housing, Department of Local Affairs. I do the same, both Spencer and Rebecca are my counterparts. I cover the Southeast region, as well as some of the central, Lincoln, Kiowa, Kit Carson. So I look forward to talking with everyone today. Thank you so much.
Okay, I'm gonna try to share. Let's see how this works. Is it sharing that portion of the screen?
Yep.
Okay.
Good, Rebecca.
Great. So thank you all for joining us. We thought we'd go through a presentation which some of you have information about, kind of affordable housing. What is the problem? Possible solutions that we at the division have seen, and then we'll open it up for discussion. And with your backgrounds, I think it'll be a great talk. So as Kathy mentioned, feel free to enter questions in the chat. We'll either respond to them during the presentation or right after, or in the chat there. And let's get going. So in today's presentation, as I mentioned, we'll be using data and case studies to address several objectives, including understanding housing affordability, the financial feasibility of affordable housing projects. Specifically, also we'll look at both in rural areas and some more urban areas as well, and the intersection of creative strategies like land banking and modular housing that help get buildings developed and individuals and families into safe, secure homes. So we're going to target those areas. So in general, what the question is, what is housing affordability? My background's anthropology, so I think it's a great question. And I always lead with kind of the definition depends on the context and organization you're talking too. So I love that was a question asked. For us, an affordable home means when individuals and families spend less than 30% of their household income on housing payments like rent or mortgage. So if you spend more than 30% of your income, that means you are housing cost burdened. In the example on the screen, I know Pro 15 covers several counties, but I just chose Morgan County as an example here. At 100% AMI, so at that median income, that median person in the county, this actually happens to be a 2-person household, that median total gross income, so pre-taxes, pre-expenses, is $58,000. When you spend money on your housing, your income after that would be about $41,000. So that's about $17,000 spent on housing, that 30%. When you get down to 50% AMI, so that's half that 100%, that AMI, that income level for Morgan County is about a little under $30,000, $29,000. And they're paying about $9,000 in housing if they were going to only be paying an affordable amount that's less than 30%. And so the income left is about $20,000. Then you get down to 30% AMI, which we consider 30% and less, usually extremely low income. And you're at your total income for the year is about $17,000. That's kind of the limit. So you could be less than that. And you spend about, in order to not be housing cost burden, you would spend about $5,000 on housing. So this kind of extrapolates that idea of housing cost burden in rural Colorado. Rural for us tends to mean just non-urban. So this might be including Western Slope counties as well. But as you can see, the above median income level is like 100% AMI or more. So that 100% level or more. If you're making that amount of money for your county, you can generally afford your housing. As you go down the tiers, so moderate income is about 80 to 100% AMI, low income is about 50 to 80%, very low income is 30 to 50%, and extremely low is 0 to 30%. And you can see the darker blue is the severely cost burden households, the lower you get. But even at 30 to 50%, which is that second line, 30% are severely cost burden and 34% are mild or moderate. So that means 60% of that population needs support with housing. Is this playing? I hope it is. This kind of shows, it's an infographic that's moving, but it shows that from 2007, Colorado was ranked number 18 in the nation for median rent. So it was similar to Arizona, in Illinois, and Washington. 10 years later, in 2017, Colorado ranks number 6 with high median rent, right behind California, DC, Hawaii, and New Jersey, and even higher median rent than New York and Massachusetts, with huge metropolises. The increasing rental price has to do with a ton of factors, including but not limited to economic and population growth and supply shortage. And then speaking of supply shortage, this information comes from the GAP, a short of affordable homes, and it actually has been updated from March 2021. But for every 100 Colorado families living at 80% AMI, so still not even at the median income, there are 94 available in affordable units. So we're getting close. That supply is getting closer to the demand. Still short though, there still isn't enough. But then if you look at the 30% AMI level, it's 30 units for every 100 family. So it obviously shows the extreme burden on families, both in supply and costs, in the challenges that we have in affordable housing. This is at the Colorado level, so I just want to let you know that. So in looking at the Out of Reach report, which is a great national report that also kind of pinpoints and goes to both the state and the county level. If you haven't seen it, I suggest everyone search the National Low Income Housing Coalition Out of Reach. It's a great interactive website where you can gain more data and information and specific to your county. This is from 2020, so I'm showing the $12 hourly minimum wage that has gone up in 2021. But it's showing that if minimum wage is $12, where I believe Colorado is, if it's not number 1 in the nation, it's definitely up there in minimum wage. In order to afford a 2-bedroom apartment in Colorado, we're not county specific, you really need to earn $26.45 per hour. And to note that that means that 1 in 4 renters can't afford rent in Colorado. Also based on that report for Colorado, it was kind of showing, well, who can afford 2-bedroom and who can afford 1-bedroom? And what jobs are there? Well, waiters and waitresses, lowest median hourly wage, they can't even afford a 1-bedroom. And you go through all those blue lines, you know, stock and order clerks, laborers and freight stock, landscaping grounds, nursing assistants, et cetera, don't even make the minimum amount hourly to qualify for a 1-bedroom housing wage. Again, this is at the Colorado level, but just trying to show that certain jobs just at the rates that they are do not line up with the price of housing in Colorado. I kind of extrapolated some of the data specific to some of the counties that Pro 15 looks at, kind of comparing Morgan County again, since we had that information earlier, to Arapahoe County and then Colorado in general. And what it shows here just in this chart quickly is the estimated kind of mean renter wage per county. So that mean person, that mean renter, what they earn per hour. You can see Morgan County lower at $16.67, Colorado's at $19.49, and Arapahoe County much higher at $21.96. Now at that mean wage, how many hours they would have to work to afford a 2-bedroom in that county. So Morgan, it's 37, so right there around that 40-hour week. Arapahoe significantly more at 55, and Colorado significantly more. But if you're only earning minimum renter wage, so in this scenario, because it's from 2020, that's at $12 an hour. In Morgan County, you have to work 51. In Arapahoe County, you have to work 100 hours a week to be able to afford a 2-bedroom. It just kind of shows the disparity that we're not earning enough for the housing costs in Colorado. So part of the challenge we kind of talked about is housing affordability, the price of rents and mortgages, the shortage of supply, and then also where and the income coming in for people is not supporting what they're able to pay for housing. So we're going to go into examples and kind of background of how the Division of Housing has supported that, as well as the programs and funds that we have available to help kind of improve that gap in affordable housing over the coming years, and examples of projects we've done in the past. I'm going to pass it off to Spencer.
Thank you, Rebecca. Yeah, so I just wanted to give a quick overview of the Colorado Division of Housing. We are housed under the Department of Local Affairs, which is set up to provide support and technical assistance to local governments throughout Colorado. In the Division of Housing specifically, we partner with local communities, local governments, nonprofits, other for-profit affordable housing developers, with the mission of creating housing and opportunities for housing for Coloradans at the lowest levels of affordability, if we can. We have several programs that we run in order to achieve this goal. We offer rental subsidies, operating subsidies for affordable apartments. Our team, the team that Rebecca and Melissa and I are on, works with communities and developers to either fund acquisition, rehabilitation, or new construction of affordable housing. We also run programs that do revolving loan funds for single-family homeowners that can get low-cost loans for repairs and or down payment assistance. And then, of course, we're always out in the field to provide technical assistance where it's needed. And that can vary from, talking to a group about the Affordable Housing 101 to really diving into a strategy to build a new project, or anything along those lines. This is just a quick highlight. I won't go over every number, but just a quick highlight of our impact in the last fiscal year, 2019 to 2020. A lot of activity on voucher. One of our focuses, as you can see, has been in homelessness. So we have a specific funding source called the Homeless Solutions Program funding that goes to serve those with the greatest need. So that's been a big, big focus of ours in the last few years. And then we also we run within the Division of Housing is the agency that inspects manufactured homes and mobile homes. Yeah. And this is just one, this is just my 101 for if you're coming to us for funding for gap filling grants or loans for either an acquisition rehab or a new construction project. This is just our kind of 101, like how do you work with us? We're a gap filler. We provide that last slice of funding into the project after you've identified where you'll get permanent financing, either tax credit equity or other sources of funds, and looked at other local funding sources or in-kind contributions. Traditionally, we fund rental housing at AMIs at 60% of area median income, and we are always looking to serve the lowest, the deepest affordable levels that the project can afford. One of our requirements is that for a rental project that you have 5% of the units at 30% of area median income or below. And traditionally, we give grants to local governments or nonprofits, and we do offer loans like mezzanine debt for private for-profit developers. And so coming up, we'll be going through a few case studies, and we really like to kind of show the different projects that have worked. We work closely with our partners in the field to come up with the actual solutions to tackling the affordable housing crisis. We're here as a resource, but it's really the partners that we're working with that come up with the creative solutions, and then we work back and forth to see if our funds are a good fit for those. We did an extensive outreach session 2 summers ago. You can tell that it wasn't this last summer because nobody's wearing a mask. They're all sitting pretty closely together. But so we did a statewide outreach session to just understand what issues people were facing around affordable housing in the field, and then what they thought were the best potential solutions. And this is kind of a high level, bullets of what we heard as a result of that outreach session. Capacity is a big one. We hear a lot that they want to get an affordable housing development off the ground, or they just want someone to build new housing in their community. There's not a lot of capacity there to get things started, or if somebody came in to build it, to kind of carry on with the ongoing compliance and either resales, rent checking. Partnerships are a big one. Obviously, we all need to learn from our peers. That was a key thing that I heard, is look to your communities that have been dealing with the issues that you've been dealing with maybe a decade earlier. We'll see that in some of the case studies. A little bit of talk on land use regulation. Sometimes density and other regulatory barriers can make what could be an affordable housing project all of a sudden not work. And a couple of strategies like land banking, fee waivers are great ways that a local government could, or a local nonprofit, could contribute to lowering the cost of housing and sort of preserving what you have there first and foremost. I think was a good one, especially with the cost of construction right now. If there are opportunities to preserve some existing housing, or even to preserve another building that's not housing and convert it to housing, that can be a great strategy to produce some more housing at a lower cost. So I think now we're going to dive into some case studies and talk about some of the potential solutions we've seen.
Yeah, thank you, Spencer. So as Spencer mentioned, we are going to look at some of the case studies. So the case studies that we chose, they really show creative ways that folks were able to create affordable housing or preserve affordable housing in rural Colorado. So some of these, while they may not be in the geographic northeast area of Colorado, it is still rural Colorado. And we're going to look at both rental and home ownership opportunities from small to larger projects and how those worked. The first one that we're going to take a look at is Cactus Corner. It's also referred to as Kiowa Creek Estates. This one was built in Eads, Colorado. It is on the smaller side. It was 6 units, ranging from 30 to 120% of AMI. And it was for rental. And so what they did is these were actually units that were manufactured off-site and shipped to Eads. They were manufactured homes. That manufacturing process controls the construction environment, therefore controlling the costs and the cost overruns that may happen. So it creates some efficiencies. How this project was able to come off the ground was a CSED, Southeast Colorado Economic Development, was able to use some of their program income, which is initially funded by the Division of Housing, just income that has come back to them through a revolving loan fund over time. So between that and a grant from the Division of Housing, they were able to create 6 new units in Eads, Colorado. And the total input from the Division of Housing was $660,000. Additionally, I'm sorry, Rebecca. Additionally, there was donated land from the county. There was, a variety of other sources from owner equity and kind labor and those TAP fees that Spencer was just referring to that really made the whole project a robust project. The second one is a larger program. It is in Montezuma County in Cortez. It was the Montezuma County Housing Authority. And what they did was Calkin Commons was an old schoolhouse. They were able to both preserve, do an adaptive reuse, and create 12 affordable units within the schoolhouse, and then build an additional 30 units in an adjacent lot to the schoolhouse. Now, this is one of the larger construction types, and it uses large equity sources such as low-income housing tax credit and federal historic tax credits. And then a combination of permanent financing, but it was able to create an additional 42 units in Cortez, Colorado that serve less than 80% of the area median income. The next one is actually in Gunnison. Lazy K Housing is a home ownership project. It has most of the units at 80% of AMI, with some at a higher 120% AMI. But what they did is the city of Gunnison actually contributed 4.3 acres of land, and they were able to build 43 new units on it to create homeownership opportunities for the folks around. It was great. The city came in with several different funding sources that were kind of those creative funding sources from the land, fee waivers, and also the homeownership. They were able to offer the homeownership counseling, which was also an in-kind value to the project. And so once this was all said and done, 43 new units of homeownership housing were created for the folks of Gunnison County. Next, I'll hand it over to Spencer for Ketcher Townhomes.
Yeah, I worked with the developer on this one, and actually it's not, this one's in progress. So this one will start construction hopefully beginning of July. But this is Ketcher Townhomes in Fort Collins, Colorado. This one will be a new construction of single family homes on a land trust. So should be, they had to reduce the units a little bit. So I haven't updated this slide, my apologies, but it will be 54 units. And that will serve, so this will serve homeowners earning less than 80% of AMI. This one, I feel like it's we talked about, like, is a land trust a good idea? You never can tell. I think it's something that might be a good strategy for communities on the Eastern Plains. Depending on where land prices are going, what's happening with the market in your community. I will point out that Fort Collins started their land trust, or the community land trust for Fort Collins. They started funding that and acquiring parcels about 10 years ago. So this is one of those parcels that they banked a long time ago, and it was available to use for this affordable housing, affordable homeownership project, a decade later. So you might look to some of the communities closer to the Front Range and kind of see what pressures they were facing 5 or 10 years ago, and what strategies they were looking at, and those strategies might play out if things got if the cost of land starts going up, or if the construction costs start going up. So that was definitely an integral part to making this project happen, was the donation of the land for it. It also got, for DOH, we awarded them about $27,500 per affordable unit, which is a little bit beyond our range, but it's very deeply affordable for a homeownership project. And then Elevation Community Land Trust, which will establish the land trust and keep these homes affordable in perpetuity, actually also provides a larger subsidy than that, over $30,000 per unit.
The city of Monte Vista, several years ago did a market study, and they found that the city actually owned 114 blighted homes that needed either demolition and new construction built on the demoed site, or to be rehabbed. So what they did is they came up with a new program where they would actually acquire these. They started with the ones that they currently owned. They would either rehab them if they were able to be rehabilitated, or they would demolish them and construct new homeownership opportunities. What happens with this affordable homeownership model is, the Division of Housing initially gave the city of Monte Vista $625,000. That's roughly $22,000 per unit with what they did. They did 28 units, and they were able to do these in smaller, do 2 or 3 at a time, to where they were able to rehabilitate these, sell them to folks under 80% of AMI, have those funds revolve back into a revolving loan fund, and continue to do it. So this model that Monte Vista came up with is something that is really a great model, where the funds are really leveraged and can continue over time to be used for the same purpose. So in addition to the funds that the Division of Housing put in, they did have $115,000 of in-kind labor that the city was able to donate to these projects. But this project in whole, with the $625,000 investment from the Division of Housing, they're going to continue to be able to revolve this. And this initial project, as I mentioned, was 28 units for homeownership, but it could continue to go on for much more than that as those funds continue to revolve. So this setup of a project is one that I personally really like. I think that this could work in a lot of different rural areas in Colorado. And not only do you have the preservation or creation of affordable housing units, but you also have the economic development component that comes with it, with increasing those blighted neighborhoods.
This is a program that it was sort of a pilot program that we ran in Loveland with, or it was the Loveland Housing Authority that was spearheading it. This was a revolving loan fund that was available to manufactured homeowners or mobile homeowners, and could apply for repairs to make those homes healthy, safe, livable. These served up to 80% AMI households, and I think it served up to 80% AMI, but when we actually looked at the program reporting, almost everyone who took advantage was at 40% AMI or below. we do have another case study to follow, so I won't dwell on it, but preservation of mobile homes is a really important strategy for preserving affordable housing opportunities in communities throughout Colorado.
Thanks, Spencer. And on that topic, another kind of pilot program we've done is a mobile home community acquisition and improvements. And by acquisition, it's actually a resident-owned community. So in this example, Cedar Village and Canyon County are actually two separate mobile home parks in Fremont County that came together as a resident-owned community to buy the parks from the owners. And we supported with acquisition, and really our money, I think, went into improvement costs, which included improving aging infrastructure and then rehabilitating the 3 rental units that were on the property. So ultimately it impacted both less than 80% AMI, half of the units, and the other half were less than 120% AMI. Included, this one actually included a permanent loan for part of the acquisition and owner equity, which was a small contribution from the mobile home owners themselves to put some skin in the game. This was about, our state contribution was about $600,000 at zero interest deferred loan for 10 years for on-site construction and improvement. So this one's kind of ongoing. I think it was 2018 when it went through. So we're looking to see if this similar model can be used in other parts of Colorado as well. And then our last one, as Spencer had mentioned, kind of the Division of Housing has a large goal of ending homelessness or making an impact in getting the unsheltered into homes. So this is an example of First on 2nd Street, which is the Homeless Solutions and Rental Assistance. It was 8 units across 2 fourplexes, and it was for extremely low income young adults at 18 to 25. CASA is the group who did it, and CASA's kind of mission is to help disadvantaged youths get off the streets and into homes in secure situations. So these are always really interesting capital stacks, which include philanthropic support that CASA gets, as well as DOH dollars. And then in most homeless projects or homeless solutions projects we do, there is a supportive services side. So not only is housing included, but the supportive services budget is looked at. What additional health and mental health services can be provided to the folks living in the homes. So in that example, in most of them, we look at that, and there's dollars from many different agencies across Colorado that we use as partners. In this one, CASA provided 12 rental assistance vouchers to ensure the youth residents only had to pay 30% of their income as rent. And the city of Montrose waived fees, saving CASA almost $55,000. And CASA raised about $600,000 from foundations and other donors. Our grant from the Division of Housing was about $500,000. So you can tell that it was contributions from everyone as much as they could. So just to let you all know, because we kind of talked about where we're located, we do have regional contacts across the state. So you kind of find your color in your county, and then that's your regional contact. I know Adams and Arapahoe is part of Pro 15, and that's Wayne McClary, if any of you are familiar with him. And then Elbert, and I think Douglas are Chris Furlong. So we can definitely send this around later. It's also available on our website. And we just want to thank you all. And we're now, I know there were some questions in the chat. I didn't want to open them up yet, but we can start a discussion, and perhaps we start with the chat questions, or if there's another way to do it, let me know.
There are questions in the chat. For those of you just joining us, if you would put your name and affiliation in the chat, so we have that information. I will have to say, and hopefully there will be some questions. That is exactly what I was looking for. That is the best presentation on affordable housing I have ever seen, and I have seen a lot of them over the years. So questions, comments, thoughts from any of the group?
Well, just this is Ariel Cisneros, Federal Reserve. One of the case studies was in Gunnison. Who was the bank that was involved in that, if you know by chance?
I don't, but if there's more questions, I can try to find that and get back with you.
Okay, just curious, and the reason, and this could be for all of the case studies, because one, as a regulator of financial institutions, and always wanting to encourage them to look at opportunities, regardless of regulator, whether it's the OCC, the FDIC, or the Federal Reserve, these help, because when a banker sees another banker working on these types of activities, it encourages them to say, oh, maybe I should look for something in my community, in my county, so forth. So just as a way to kind of share that wealth.
That's great to know. Thank you.
Well, and for my part, I hope it was the Gunnison Bank and Trust, because that was my very first job out of high school. So I'm partial to them.
Trish, they were on our board.
Yeah. Trish or Sandy, did you have, because you work directly in the field?
Well, Rebecca and I have talked numerous times about numerous projects. So I've probably asked you many questions. I think one of the biggest things that we struggle with is understanding. So it's gap funding. I noticed in some of these case studies or in some of these projects, there's like local housing funds or local community funds that help in. I guess my biggest question is examples or how to, or where was that created? I mean, we have a lot of projects kind of going on in Phillips County. So funding sources and different things is always tricky. But I guess my question is, you know, how are maybe some of those funds created and examples so we could follow suit?
That's a great question. Yeah, that is one of the trickiest, you know, propositions for the rural communities that don't have a ton, like a local, you know, local funds to just throw at a project. I know for a lot of more rural projects, we've seen the local contribution come as sort of an in-kind contribution. You know, it can be like helping out with site infrastructure if the city has a construction crew, like maybe doing some of the grading and getting the site ready. You know, it might not you know, come up to the amount of $500,000, but that's okay, because it's a lot of times it's every little bit helps. Also for the non-entitlement communities, if I can do a little bit of a HUD speak, the state receives funding from HUD for every community in Colorado that does not receive a direct allocation. So we do get CDBG funds from HUD that are available for rural or all the other non-entitlement communities that don't get funding. So we'll consider that if you're looking for gap funding on a smaller project in a rural community, then chances are we're willing to go beyond our typical ranges for gap funding that we would on a Denver Metro project. But we're probably willing to go a little bit beyond that to, you know, cover a little bit more of the gap. I know there are sort of nationwide programs, Federal Home Loan Bank that you could apply for. Colorado Health Foundation has recently got into the game of funding affordable housing. So that's a resource. I don't know, Rebecca or Melissa, have you seen do you have any other thoughts on that?
The only other one, I mean, the donated land was a big one. And then the waiver of tap fees is another great way that we've seen contribution. I think the in-kind waiver was an example, but I think Spencer bringing up the two other areas that you can try to obtain additional funds to kind of complement the DOH funds in the deal. I think one area our presentation didn't touch on still trying to figure out how to discuss this part, but the cost to build is extremely expensive. And building the unit, whether it's a luxury unit downtown Denver, that's just more, but even the basic sticks of it is very expensive to build. And that's a lot of where the trouble comes in. And we didn't necessarily talk about it in rural areas, but the cost to build might be more. In one of our examples, we don't show, cost to build is the season in the mountains is a lot shorter than other seasons. So we have to take all of that into account, and that jacks up pricing. So I think that example from Monte Vista with the in-kind labor is a great example. If there's local people who can assist with that, that's a great example. So that's kind of my tidbits, and maybe Melissa has some more.
Yeah, so I echo what both Spencer and Rebecca said. We do know that there are some unique challenges in rural Colorado because they don't have all of the resources that metropolitan areas have. And so, yeah, just finding any of those smaller ways to have those in-kind contributions, that's how a lot of these case studies that we looked at actually were able to come, $50,000 in tap fees. Once you get, a $50,000 contribution and then another and another, it really starts to add up. So really just exploring all of the local options is key in some of these.
And I think we put also the manufactured home, we have a couple groups actually factories in Colorado who do it, which obviously limits carrying cost. That eliminates a lot of the architectural engineering, those soft cost fees that can start to add up on a project. So more than glad to put people in touch with groups we've worked with to just explore that area. It just kind of depends.
I think I muddied the waters by using manufactured home earlier. So I think just to make sure we're clear, Rebecca's talking about sort of modular built, like not necessarily a manufactured home, but a home that is built off-site in a factory and then brought to the site and assembled. Not quite the same as a mobile home, though.
Going back to the capital stack, did you have USDA RD or Rural Housing Services as part of that in any of the examples? I mean, and that might tie in with Trisha's question of USDA and their rural housing.
Errol, that is a great point, and I think that's an oversight on our part. I know Rebecca's working with a group right now that was working on a USDA RD like 515 portfolio preservation project. So I know there's a few projects in the pipeline that would probably have some great case studies coming up. Right. And but yeah, we just going through our case studies, we didn't pull one that had used RD financing, but that is obviously a great source of low cost loans for rural projects.
And I'm not sure who mentioned, but Federal Home Loan Bank, as far as with their some of their grants and so forth. So yeah, if you can team up with a bank that's a member of Federal Home Loan Bank, I mean, they have to apply on your behalf, but it's in the past, it's been undersubscribed. So there's funding that's there.
And I think another source that we touched on one was CHAFA. And I do want to let you know, CHAFA has these community resource managers. They do have one for Southeast Colorado, Southwest, and Northwest. Right now, they are looking to add one to Northeast Colorado. So I think that'll be an excellent asset to knowing how CHAFA and whatever products and services they provide can help in those communities. CHAFA's also piloting a couple projects that include development capacity funds, and looking at maybe a pilot project to show how certain rural developments can put projects together with that complicated capital stack. It's all kind of in discussions now, but we can pass it on to Pro 15 as more information comes down the pipeline.
Can I just add to make sure you include or consider at least housing CDFIs that may also be appropriate for a development?
Melanie, Sandy, Rich, thanks for joining us. Kirsten, any other questions from the group?
Sorry, I'll put in another quick
No,
question.
that's great.
I think I know this but just remind me, maybe there's examples. So lots of resources. I think, you know, we have a housing authority, we have the land, we have, I mean, we've got this perfect thing that we just need to do something with. I think the concern is after it's built, then sustainability. So remind me again, if there's funding to help for subsidizing, to keep, you know, to help the housing authority maintenance 12 new units and offsetting the AMI amount of money that's coming in. Remind me. I think I've asked this question to Rebecca before.
I would say that the funding to sort of offset the ongoing maintenance and, you know, accounting for the lower rents and the fact that the rents will be capped to be affordable to folks at the lower AMIs is typically done up front. So you're only sizing your debt based on the lower AMIs now and what those are projected to be over 15, 20, 25 years. And then that's where the rest of the subsidy comes in, the rest of the subsidy to build it. We also build in for most apartments, and especially affordable, you build in a replacement reserve into the operating costs. And that's a specific amount put aside every month per unit for ongoing capital needs and replacement, with the idea that in 15 or 20 years, there will be some major infrastructure or capital system improvements that need to be made, and that you have a solid reserve fund that will be able to offset the cost of those. I don't know about paying for all of them, but at least offset the cost. So those are a couple of mechanisms that you would use to, sort of think about like the financial realities of operating an affordable rental development for the life of the project. There's also, I think one of the things is, kind of like the people capital, like who does income qualifications and who does the property management. I think there's some good nonprofit organizations that sort of operate on the Eastern Plains, and I don't know how wide their footprint is, but I think that could be something where you kind of see who's working in a close by community and say, would it be possible for you to extend your reach over to our community? Like, would it be worthwhile to add another project to your portfolio and like take on management of that?
Okay, we have time for about one more question, if there's one out there. If not, thank you all for being on the call. Thank you, Rebecca, Spencer, and Melissa. Outstanding job today. And everyone have an absolutely awesome weekend. And we will see you next Friday when we will talk about how an oil and gas group is working on climate change. So thank you all for being here, and hopefully we'll see you next week.
Thank you for inviting us, Kathy.
Thank you.